Today's story is from the Ramayana. It's Deja Vu for Ravan and his Lankan courtiers when another Vanar shows up uninvited at court. Welcome to Stories from India. This is a podcast that will take you on a journey through the rich mythology, folklore, and history of the Indian subcontinent. I am Narad Muni, the celestial storyteller and the original Time Lord. With my ability to travel through space and time, I can bring you fascinating stories from the past, the present, and the future. From the epic tales of the Mahabharata and Ramayana to the folk tales of the Panchatantra, to stories of Akbar Birbal and Tenali Raman. I have a story for every occasion. The purpose of the stories is neither to pass judgment nor to indoctrinate. My goal is only to share these stories with people who may not have heard them before, and to make them more entertaining for those who have. Today, we are back to the Ramayana. The Ramayana is one of two major epics in Indian mythology. The other one is the Mahabharata, which we have also covered on this show. The Ramayana begins with Ram, the crown prince of Ayodhya. Despite being the crown prince, he did not become king. Not immediately. His stepmother, Kaikeyi, pressured Ram's father into sending the crown prince into exile for 14 years. Ram went, but not by himself. His wife, Sita, and his brother, Lakshman, went along too. Ram was an avatar of Vishnu. If you really have not heard any of the previous stories on the show, and you don't know who Vishnu is, let me give you a quick introduction to the Holy Trinity of Indian mythology. Vishnu is the preserver of the universe. He creates a kind of balance between Brahma, the creator, and Shiva, the destroyer. Shameless plug here, but Brahma is also my dad. And I'm president of the Vishnu fan club. And I regularly meet Shiva. So you can rest assured that this show is as authentic as it gets. Ram, Lakshman, and Sita spent many years surviving in a forest. They faced one challenge after another. There was always a demon or a demoness looking to make a meal out of them, or to kidnap them, or enslave them. The trio managed to fight off all such challenges until Ravan abducted Sita. Ravan was the ruler of Lanka and the ultimate boss character to be defeated. If you want a modern world analogy, take Lord Voldemort from the Harry Potter universe. Imagine Voldemort with 10 heads, so he'd be 10 times as evil, and blessed with all kinds of superpowers, so defeating him seemed nearly impossible. Following some clues here and there, Ram and Lakshman searched for Sita. They got help from the Vanars, a kingdom of monkeys led by their king, Sugriv. Most of the actual help came from Hanuman, who was Sugriv's advisor and right-hand Vanar. Hanuman searched for Sita and found her across the ocean in Ravan's kingdom of Lanka. Sita refused to fly back with Hanuman. She insisted that Ram himself should make the trip to Lanka. He should defeat Ravan and take her back in full honor. Hanuman took her message back to Ram. But first, he burned most of Lanka down. After he returned to the Vanar base camp and shared the news, the Ayodhya brothers and all the Vanars made it to Lanka. It wasn't easy because they had to first build a bridge across the ocean. And along the way, they had help in the form of intelligence. Vibhishan, one of Ravan's brothers, switched sides. He was one of the few people who felt that his brother was in the wrong. And that's where we'll continue the story. Ram's war council had set up camp. Ram, Lakshman, Sugriv, and Hanuman were in it, of course. And so was Jambavan, the bear. Sachiv, the secretary, whose name literally means secretary, started with the agenda. He said, "First up, the very important task of food and supplies. So far, we haven't found much food. We considered ordering through Amazon delivery, but even though we are all prime mates, at best, we only get a 2-day delivery. Meanwhile, I heard it through the apevine that one of the Vanars had somehow managed to find a big bag of banana chips." "Give the Vanar a medal," Sugriv said. "What's his name anyway? Chipmunk?" "No," Sachiv said. "But I like the name you just gave him. Chipmunk. I think I'll make it permanent on his record." "There's something I don't get," Jambavan said. "Why do all of you Vanars love anything with bananas?" Sugriv was ready. "Because they have appeal. Get it? Appeal, as in they are interesting or attractive. And appeal, as in the outer covering of a banana." "It's less funny if you have to explain it," grumbled the bear. Sachiv continued. "Second item on the agenda, we have 2 new members, Angad and Vibhishan. Narad has already explained who Vibhishan is in the recap just now. But it's important to point out who Angad is. It's possible that some listeners missed episode 125, where Angad had also appeared. But just for the record, Angad was Vali's son. Sachiv went on to explain that Vali was Sugriv's brother, in case anyone needed that explanation. He was the original king of the Vanars, and he had some superpowers of his own. Those superpowers had even helped Vali defeat Ravan. And of course, he had repeatedly fended off Sugriv's attempts to dethrone him. Until the day Sugriv had Ram on his side. Ram's arrow brought an end to Vali. All this was very relevant, of course, because defeating Vali had been the price the Ayodhya brothers had to pay in order to secure Vanar help in this attack on Lanka. Angad was the son of that very same Vali. But it's not like he held a grudge or anything, because Angad had known that Vali had done the wrong thing, because Angad had sided with Sugriv, not his father. Anyway, back to the story. Lakshman addressed Sugriv and pointed out that Angad had been on their side since the very beginning. Why induct him to the council now? What was special about today? The Vanar king calmly replied that it was because Angad was going to prominently feature in today's episode. So the extra attention, the backstory, and the introduction were completely justified. Angad entered the tent and swore an oath to always act in the best interest of the Vanars, one for all and all for one, and all that sort of stuff. Vibhishan was next. You could easily tell the decision to induct Vibhishan was not unanimous. Jambavan, the bear, said that it was a bit of a grisly situation. It was practically pandemonium here. Was Vibhishan sure he could bear the responsibilities of being on this war council? After all, this war council had to be the polar opposite of the one he had left behind. It's a sign of the respect the council had for Jambavan that no one groaned at his bear jokes. Lakshman didn't say anything, but his expression said it all. He didn't seem to trust Vibhishan yet. It was Ram who spoke up and addressed both the direct question as well as the vibes from Lakshman. Vibhishan had proved he was up to it. While the Vanars were setting up camp here, Vibhishan had spied out the area and planned a better spot for them to be by sunrise tomorrow morning, Mount Suvail. Vibhishan added that it was the perfect base for some guerrilla warfare. Sugriv clapped enthusiastically. Vibhishan had just proved that his dad jokes were worthy of this council. Ravan's brother bowed gracefully. He then explained why Suvail was the perfect place, strategically speaking. It had a great view of the Lankan capital. That was the spot for them to confront Ravan. They could survey the whole Lankan army from up there. When Sugriv asked how Vibhishan knew about the place, Vibhishan admitted that before switching sides and all, he used to go hiking there often. To make their work easier, he had some copies of hiking maps with him as well. He recommended the Blue Trail. It was the quickest way to the top of the mountain. Normally, it might be considered challenging, but since 99% of them were monkeys, they should not have any trouble. He was pretty confident about that. Everyone studied the maps carefully and agreed. For surveillance, there was no better place than Suvail. And next morning, before sunrise, the Vanar army had reached the top, and no one had any regrets. The top of Suvail had exactly the right view. From where they stood, it directly faced Ravan's balcony. There, the king of Lanka seemed to be doing yoga. It was early morning, and that was the perfect time to get his body in shape. So why not? Though I have to tell you that many of Ravan's asanas were very much modified because of the simple fact that he had 10 heads, where normal asanas are defined for a single head. And because all of his 10 heads were so vain, he wore his 10-headed crown. As the sun slowly rose over the horizon, Ravan suddenly became aware of chatter. Chatter as in the sound that monkeys made. A whole lot of monkeys. Ravan thought that his Department of Environmental Destruction and his Environmental Destruction Agency had both assured him that they had carried out a very thorough monkey extermination program. That was after Hanuman's visit. And that's when it hit him. Oh no. He realized that this must be the Vanar army. He looked over the railings and his heart stopped. Well, not exactly. But the Vanar army was much larger than he had expected. Still, he wasn't worried. Monkeys would not be able to harm him, thanks to his superpowers. On the other hand, the two humans in that group might be a problem. On the other side of the valley, Sugriv looked at the distance. It was maybe half a mile or so, but he was confident that he could make it. It really was no problem for him, though his less gifted Vanar subjects may need something like a hot air baboon. Oops, he meant hot air balloon. He was still thinking that when the king of the monkeys, when he caught sight of the smug expression on Ravan's face, the king of the Vanars leapt into action. Literally. He jumped from the top of Mount Savail and landed right on Ravan's balcony. Dude, nice jump, Ravan's head number 7 said, full of surprise. The other heads quickly shushed him. You aren't supposed to say nice things about your enemy. And justifiably so, because Sugriv grabbed Ravan's crown and threw it aside. The two of them got into a fist fight. No prizes for guessing who came out on top, given that I just told you about Ravan's superpowers. Best I can say about Sugriv is that he managed to leap off of Ravan's balcony and reached his friends back on Savail. Ram scolded Sugriv for being a bit rash here. They had come here with this massive Vanar army. Did Sugriv really think that they could just have defeated Ravan like that? It was not that easy. But on the flip side, it had been a nice touch, taking away Ravan's crown like that, and coming back intact with his own crown still on his head. Nice morale boost for all the Vanars. The Vanars spent the next few hours in strategic planning. They decided that they must surround the city and block off all 4 gates. Lakshman pointed out what he thought was a fundamental flaw in the plan. What's the use of surrounding the city? Look, all these Asurs, they can fly, can't they? How is it a siege if they can leave the city by just flying away and getting behind our lines? It seems like a fair point, but Vibhishan assured Lakshman that Asurs would not desert their city. It was just hardwired into their brains that they must stand their ground. Jambavan whispered in an aside to Lakshman, Don't worry, if he's wrong, I'll bear witness. Fat lot of good that will do, Lakshman said. If he's wrong, they might stuff you, call you Teddy, and sell you as a toy to children. But they need not have worried. Vibhishan was right. Not a single Asur flew out of the city. Angad observed as he stood on Ravan's palace roof and studied his plans for the 10th time. He had been given very specific orders, and he was quite confident that he was up to the job. Ram was sending him as his negotiator. The rest of the war council had been shocked by that decision. Lakshman was most vocal. "You're still trying to be decent here? Ravan abducted your wife. You don't have to do it by the book." The book that Lakshman was referring to was the famous guidebook, Ethics on the Battlefield, Do's and Don'ts for the Modern King. It was quite the rage, and every kingdom had a few copies. But, like many other things, sadly, all copies of this book have perished. So, if you haven't heard of it before, I'm not really surprised. Lakshman was sure that Ravan wasn't referring to his copy of the book. Addressing Ram, he said, "What's more, you're putting Angad in danger." But Angad spoke up at this point that it was getting on and he'd better get started on his mission. So that's how Angad landed on the roof of Ravan's palace. Scaling the wall wasn't really a problem. There were a couple of guards who thought they'd arrest him. But all it took was a little uppercut and a right hook. Just light taps, really. But it was game over right there. It was going to put those two out of action for a while. Lying in a hospital bed, they might rethink their allegiance to Ravan. Angad looked down now through the skylight. Ravan was on his throne, and it seemed that the court was full. Angad didn't smash the skylight going in. He was on a peace mission, after all. So he dropped down the side into an open window, and in one leap landed right in the center of the court, facing Ravan. There was a gasp. Everyone in court remembered what had happened the last time a Vanar had been there. Some of the courtiers grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher. It was a panic reaction, really. Hanuman's visit had that kind of a lasting effect. Angad said, "Relax, guys. I'm not here to start a fire. I'm here on a diplomatic mission to see if we can make a deal." Ravan would have ordered Angad seized, but he thought there was time enough for that. Let the monkey say what he had in mind. Besides, the monkey seemed familiar. And then Ravan remembered why.
"Hey, I recognize you. You're Angad, aren't you? I recognize you from your graduation photo that Wali showed me. A chimp of the old block, eh?"
Angad said nothing. Ravan asked,
"How's your dad?"
Angad shrugged.
"He isn't. Listen, Ravan, I'm about to offer you the deal of a lifetime. It might be the smartest deal that you'll ever make. Give us Sita back, put Vibhishan on the throne, and you can retire. No one else in Lanka has to get hurt. We'll go on our merry way back towards where we came from. And you asked how my dad is? I'll tell you how he is. He isn't. And if you want to know what happened to him, I'll tell you in one word. Ram. You knew that Wali was impossible to defeat. He defeated you before you guys became friends. And one arrow from Ram is all it took. You might want to take the deal, really." Ravan laughed in contempt. "Do you seriously expect me to, monkey?" "No, Angad said. The truth is, I don't want you to take the deal. I'd have been pretty disappointed if you did. I must confess, I had a few additional, very humiliating clauses prepared for you, in case you actually took that deal. But you made it easy for me. This way, we can wipe the floor with you. You can watch, bit by bit, how we dismantle your kingdom. I know you've punched a few guys around here and there, but nothing, I repeat, nothing comes close to what you're up against now. You don't need to be going up against Ram or Lakshman or Hanuman. I'd pick the weakest Vanar, and within an hour, he'd have rubbed your 10 noses on the floor, begging for forgiveness. And your army is no match for ours. Ravan was getting extremely annoyed with this monkey. You think? He scoffed. I do, Angad replied. You should try it sometime. It'll be good exercise for some of those empty heads of yours. All of Ravan's 10 heads were turning red and purple. Now, monkey, I'm going to count to 3 and... But Angad interrupted. Don't try it. It might be too high a number for you. Guards! Arrest him! Ravan exclaimed. Hey, you, monkey, get down on your knees, shouted a guard as he approached with 3 of his very large companions. Angad looked at them calmly. Make me. Before they got too close, though, Angad lashed out and jabbed at the guard. The guard collapsed instantly and tripped 2 of his buddies. The last one hesitated. Angad didn't. Hit them hard, hit them often. That was Angad's motto. But in this case, the last guard didn't need much of an incentive to run away. His job done, Angad addressed Ravan. See you on the battlefield, you piece of garbage. He jumped up and smashed through the skylight. Other guards tried to chase him, but Angad was already back on surveil within minutes. So that was it. We'll pause it here this time. And the next time we come back to the Ramayana, we'll see some action on the battlefield. Check out the links in the show notes for other Ramayana episodes. In the next episode, we are dipping back into history. It's the story of a real person from 16th century India. She was the longest ruling queen in all of Indian history, and she was known to her enemies as the Pepper Queen. Thank you all for the comments on social media and on Spotify's Q&A. I can't directly reply to the questions there, but I'll address them here on this show. Rishan, you and a few others have gotten your wish. We are going to do a few other stories, but we will come back to the Ramayana pretty soon. Vamsi, Daivik and Vaishnavi, thank you for the feedback. I'm really glad you liked the last episode. I love all your suggestions, so I've added them all to my list. Vaishnavi, I'll soon do an episode on Shambhala, but I might do the story about Barbaric and Krishna first. That was a really interesting conversation that I witnessed personally. And I'll add the Pururavas and Urvashi story to my backlog too. Vamsi, I'll be doing an episode on Sister Nivedita soon. And Daivik, I'll do one on Shiva as well.
Samay, the story of the golden mongoose doesn't really have any closure. The mongoose wandered on and continues to wander on this day, unable to find an equivalently noble sacrifice. So if you find a very, very, very old mongoose that's half golden and half silver haired, and it asks you if you know of any sacrifices lately, you may want to help it along in its journey. Ram Krishna, I will cover Chandrakanta, but it's impossible to cover the entire story in just one episode. And Navya, thank you for the feedback. It's lovely to hear your words of encouragement. If you have any other comments or suggestions, or if there are any particular stories you'd like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com, or tweet at sfipodcast, or reply to the questions on Spotify's Q&A. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. A big thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.